Hello. Today, I want to talk about redstone and redstone timings. So you may have already seen a few hints around some videos, and also the mod that I made, the redstone debug mod. Those have all been hints towards this video right here. Also two videos, one by Myron Erio and one by Nasmus, that I believe have already been released. And links to them will of course be in the description. Also the link to the mod that I'm using here, the redstone debug mod, on my channel will also be in the description. Anyway, as I said, I want to talk about redstone timings, and those are really quite interesting, and there's been some misconceptions and disagreements in the community, and me, Myron Erio, and Nasmus, as I said, have gotten together using my mod. We've tested it. We pretty much agree that it is accurate in its current form, and we've tested pretty much everything. I've done some very extensive testing, and I'd like to present my results to you guys today. I'm also gonna do some theory at the end, and yeah, so for the first part of this video, I'm actually gonna show you guys the one big table that I have with every single rising edge redstone interaction in the game, and then I'm also going to have a smaller table for falling edges, which is kind of less interesting, but I guess you should also know about that. There's just a few notes I want to have about those before we begin, and the first one is the fact that redstone dust will always update in chat before other components if it's powered directly by those components, because redstone dust is basically it's this one special block in this game that doesn't actually work based on tile ticks. Tile ticks are the method the game uses to schedule updates for later. Redstone dust is actually run directly by update calls from block updates nearby it, also when you place it. And basically, let's say there's a repeater behind some redstone dust that turns on. Then that repeater will calculate everything that it needs to do to decide whether or not it needs to be on. It'll set the blocks. It'll set the block in front of it to be on for redstone in the world, but it won't actually set the block itself. Like, it won't actually turn itself to the turned on repeater yet. It'll call the update methods to any nearby redstone. To the neighboring blocks, which will, if there's redstone dust in the areas where it's able to power it, then it'll call the update methods for the redstone dust class in those locations, which will calculate, and those will replace themselves, output to the chat with my mod, and then return back to the method that calculates the redstone repeater updates, and that will output to the chat as well and set the block in the world. Hopefully that makes sense. I tried to make it as concise as I can. Another thing you need to know is the way these tables are organized is the rows are basically methods of input, the method that we use to get the input to whichever block we're testing or whichever scenario we're testing. And the columns are actually, like I said, scenarios that we'd like to test. So these are pretty much everything you need to know. Every useful interaction in the game, well, I say useful, every interaction in the game more or less. Now another thing you need to know is tile ticks. What I mean by tile ticks is basically blocks like repeaters, torches, and technically comparators. Well, comparators don't actually work based on tile ticks. They rather are tile entities. Those are processed later in the tick, sorry. And I'm actually going to talk about update order in the tick a little bit later in the video. But for the purposes of this testing, I've tested everything and I've found the comparators actually work the same as repeaters in timing wise, and so do torches. And so I've excluded them from the test, and I'll only show you repeaters, but trust me, I've done the testing, they work the same. Finally, just before we begin, I'm going to be going from the top left corner all the way down to the bottom right corner. And I'm going to do it row by row, so we'll start with the input row, go over all 7 categories, then go with the tile tick row, and so on and so forth. So, enjoy. Welcome back. How was the ride? Alright, so you may have noticed there's two things I've excluded from this testing, and that is repeaters with higher delays as well as more blocks on pistons. I only tested basically the one block on the piston, and so let's just prove right now that these act in the same way as you'd expect. There we go, this is 2 ticks as you'd expect. Again, 2 ticks, sticky piston, normal piston, as we've done the rest of our testing. This will also be 2 ticks. There you go, 22 and 24. Same thing over here. I suppose you guys can trust me a little bit at least. And then this is going to be 3 ticks now. There you go. Of course the difference is going to be 2 ticks, but you can see I turned on the lever, then 2 ticks for this to extend, then another tick that this guy waits, and then 2 more ticks. You may find more information about that in Myron Irio's video. We don't actually know why this happens, but we just know that it does. Pistons wait 1 additional tick before extending when powered by another piston. That's why the only way where pistons are actually take 3 game ticks to extend, or only to extend. They never take 3 game ticks to retract. They only take 3 game ticks to extend if powered by another piston directly like this, and not actually with a block dropping, because this way, oh sorry, that was too fast. Because this way, they will only take 2 game ticks. Oops, my bad. There you go. I'm not going to go over the chat. You can keep doing this. You can figure it out for yourself if you like. There you go. And yeah, that was also 2 ticks. So this is the only real exception to this. Basically, what you're seeing is with the sticky piston, you may have noticed, this piece of dust and this piece of dust turned in different ticks. This is the one and only exception to floors moving fast if the piston receives a short pulse. Basically, the first block will go faster than the rest of them, and the rest of them will go at normal 2 tick speed. Let's get straight on to the other thing, repeaters. That was 3 ticks, as you can see. This will be 5 ticks. Yep, have to wait a little bit for that. And I've tested all of these. I hope you can just believe me, or test by yourself if you don't believe me, that these all take basically the amount of time they would usually take plus 2 times the extra delay. So the base piston is, the base repeater is 2 ticks of delay per each delay amount. The one exception is, as you've seen from the testing and from the table, the one exception is if fed by manual input, which is lever, buttons, pressure plates, tripwires, even if other entities in the world actually trigger the tripwire. Anything like that, anything that's, if you can sort of understand where we're going here, manual inputs, anything like that will only delay this by 1 game tick, instead of 2, that is. So then, why have we always thought that pistons actually take 3 game ticks to extend instead of 2 game ticks? That has to do with some misconceptions and some animation inaccuracies, and so I want to talk about everything quickly. First of all, a piston that finishes extending or retracting will wait an additional game tick before extending or retracting again. So that may seem like 3 game ticks. In reality, to fully extend and then fully retract, or fully retract and then fully extend, you need at the very least 5 game ticks, 2 per direction, and an additional tick to wait. The other thing is, of course, that when a piston directly powers another piston in this sort of way and doesn't drop its block, then the pistons will actually wait an additional game tick before extending or retracting. So, or no, sorry, only extending. In retraction, this doesn't work the same. In retraction, they only take 2 game ticks. So yeah, so this thing would also take 3 game ticks, as you've seen from the previous example here and during the table run through. Finally, the animation also takes 3 game ticks, which is why we may have thought it was 3 game ticks in the past. So without further ado, let's move on to the second, smaller table of falling edge timings. I think the two most alarming things we've learned throughout this entire process is that A, pistons don't actually take 3 game ticks to fully extend, except for this one exception right here. Every other scenario will take only 2 game ticks. There is of course the situation that I described before, if a piston is just finished extending or just finished retracting, and of course the blocks also apply to this, then they will have to wait 1 additional game tick before being able to extend or retract again. But that's kind of to be expected. This is the only thing that I find really, really alarming and really surprising. This is the only way that it takes 3 game ticks for a piston to extend. There's no way for a piston to take 3 game ticks to retract. And to be honest, I don't understand why. I have no explanation for this. However, the other thing that we learned that's special, or that we didn't know before, that we speculated, I know myself and Leggert and Helvins of the SciCraft server have all speculated this before, especially with our witch farm design. But we've speculated before that certain blocks like repeaters and torches, when powered by tripwire and levers, only take 1 game tick instead of 1 redstone tick. We had no proof for this, we didn't do enough testing, and we had no explanation for this certainly. And now I have everything. So I've done the testing, I've proved this. Let's show it with comparators as well. There you go. And finally let's show it with torches, I suppose, as well. There you go. And again, as I said, this works the same with buttons, pressure plates, tripwires, and so on. And, well, this time around, I do have an explanation for why that happens. The reason this happens is because there's two... It's not exactly like that, but let's just imagine for a second as if it's like that. There's 2 different sections to a tick. First of all, there's everything that has to happen on the server, so that's user input, user output. So basically the server has to send all the information out to all the users, has to take in all the information from all the users, has to process everything, has to process commands by users, and so on and so forth. And then the second part is what actually happens in the world. That is the second part. That is what happens later in the tick. So then, what is exactly the thing that's causing all of these to only take 1 game tick only when powered by direct user input, or entities powering tripwire is the one exception to that, I suppose. The reason this happens is because the first part of the tick, I turn on the lever. Then, this immediately schedules an update for this repeater, for example, in the current world time plus 2. So it says, in 2 game ticks from now, schedule an update for this repeater. However, little does this lever know, the world time hasn't actually counted up 1 yet in the current tick. It's only started the tick when the lever is flicked, and the total world time will only count up later in the tick once the actual tick that controls, once the actual tick function in the world class is called, or world server I think is the class. Anyway, point is, the total world count hasn't gone up yet. However, once it does go up in the tick, then it's already within the same tick this lever was turned on. It's already the total world time that this was scheduled for plus 1. So that only leaves time for the next game tick for this repeater to turn on. I think sometimes the Mojang developers write code separately and then just throw it all together. This is also why the previous version of my mod that I showed in the video about the mod doesn't work like this. That one will actually say that this has 2 ticks of delay between these, because each time when this is flicked and when this is turned on, I print out the total world time, whereas now I'm counting up a variable at the very start of the tick on the server, and that one is what gets printed out, and that one is perfectly accurate. Another feature I added since the previous version of the mod that I didn't actually show in the video is the print start end of tick, and that can be true or false. By default it's false, and basically that one prints out a message as you'd expect at the start and end of a tick, just to be extra sure. The same download on the old video is the one that contains the new updated version of the mod, so if you want to, then go ahead and re-download that, or download it for the first time if you haven't already. And the last thing I want to talk about in this video is update order. So this is quite an elusive thing. Many people throughout the ages of Minecraft have attempted to understand the update order exactly, and it's not as direct as you may think. First of all, well, a lot of things happen in the tick actually, but I'm only going to refer to what happens, the update order of redstone components. So the first thing that actually happens is repeaters. They are the very first thing that gets updated, and immediately after that, torches get updated. These are the two tile tick redstone components. These both get updated first thing in the tick. Again, the order is repeater and then torch. The next thing that happens is pistons send out all their block updates to all blocks. The next thing that gets updated is comparators. They happen at the very end of the tick with all the tile entities. I think actually they happen after most of the tile entities, but they certainly happen before pistons. Now in case you didn't know, pistons are actually tile entities when they're moving. The block 36 contains a tile entity called tile entity piston. Surprising, I know. And those ones get updated, I think, the very last thing in the tick. Now you may have noticed I haven't mentioned redstone dust at all. That's because, as I've said before, redstone dust is a unique block in the game. I think it's the only example of this in the entire game. And what's unique about it is that redstone dust doesn't work based on neither tile ticks nor tile entities. Redstone dust is actually based on immediate update calls. It has no delay, it has no, future scheduling functionality. Everything that needs to happen with redstone dust happens immediately when any update in the area happens. So that's also why, as I've explained before, when a repeater powers a piece of redstone dust, or even when a lever powers a piece of redstone dust, then this repeater, as it's updating, will call the update calls of this redstone dust, which will output first, and then set itself back to a powered repeater. Again, this also works with a lever, so the dust is going to output to chat first because the lever has gotten updated. It immediately updates the redstone dust. Notice this is actually happening before the total world count is turning on. So I can actually prove that, I think. There we go. For some reason, this repeater updated after this one. And my theory can explain why. This redstone dust and this redstone dust both updated in the same tick. However, this lever is what scheduled the update for this repeater in 2 ticks of delay, but the world tick count hasn't even gone up yet in the tick where this lever turned on. However, by the time this redstone dust got turned on, after pistons have gotten processed in the tick, you can be sure that the total world count has gone up by 1, and it scheduled an update for this repeater 2 ticks from now, but that's actually 1 tick later than this one. That's why this one turned on at 1453, and this one turned on at 1454. However, these 2 pieces of redstone dust still did turn on in the same tick. There you go. Point in case. One final thing I have to say, truly final, is that I'm not legally allowed to post my source code on the internet, even though I would gladly do that if I could. However, if you'd like to criticize me, check my methods, make sure everything is correct and that I haven't lied to you in anything here, I urge you actually to do that. And the way you can do that is by sending me a private message on YouTube. I'd gladly send you my source code, and I'd like as many people as possible even to go over it, make sure I haven't made any mistakes, confirm that everything I've showed in this video, all the evidence here, is actually the truth, is correct. And until someone disproves me, I believe I have sealed the deal with redstone timings. So thank you oh so very much for watching. This has been a great endeavor for me. I've done really so much work. I've spent countless hours working on this. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I hope everyone from this day forth will know exactly how redstone timings work for every single redstone component. And I hope that makes us all better redstoners in the future. So that's about it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.